Hey, this is Troy Taylor with the Championship Football Coaches Clinic on Totem Sports. And we got Coach Cooper, we got Coach Anderson, Coach Ball down St. Pete. And Coach Cooper is going to talk about multiple coverages for us today. Coach Cooper, so glad that you could be on tonight. And could you just tell the Championship Football Coaches Clinic and Totem Nation about yourself and your background?
Yeah, my name is Gerald Cooper. I've coached quite a few positions. I started off at the high school level. I was fortunate enough to have opportunity to be a graduate assistant at CSU Pueblo when they first opened that program up, where I coached wide receivers. I left there and I went to Western State, Colorado. These are both RMAC schools. I think they changed their name. Now they're Western State of College of Colorado or something different, but it was not the same as it was when I was there. I coached wide receivers there as well. And then I left there and went out to Illinois. I was at like North Park University, Benedictine University, where I was a DB coach. I played defensive back primarily in college. Also, my last year and a half, I played a little bit on the offense side as well, at wide receiver, slot, and Z wide receiver. And then from there, I've jumped into the scouting profession. I have a kid in high school, IB student. I'm divorced. I have custody of that kid. I got to be a dad. I'm a dad first. So, I got to get this kid through high school. Once I get him through high school, I really look forward to getting back into coaching,
So just talking about scouting and how you got into that before you get into the DB play, could you just tell, there's probably some coaches out there that would be interested in getting into scouting, or I like how the Patriots do it. They have one guy that's in charge of all the O-line. They probably have one guy that's in charge of all the DBs in the entire country. So just go over a little bit about, your background with that and what you've learned.
Well, when I was at Benedictine University, the head coach there, his name is Gerald Cooper. We are not related. That was one of his favorite jokes. There's no nepotism here. He's an old Caucasian man. I love him to death. He's like my mentor. I love this guy. That was one of his running jokes. We were the old Coach Coop and the young Coach Coop, but he had been in the scouting profession as well for many years. And he just kind of, pushed me into it. I was doing it. I started off going to the Senior Bowl and just writing up reports and things like that. And then, once I got out of coaching, I assumed more responsibility. So, I have a region, and then I also, I really focus on wide receivers, DBs, quarterbacks, a lot of the passing game type stuff, because that's really where my eyes have been trained as a coach, to look. So, I really look at those things. But I guess I was just fortunate, I kind of got pushed into it by somebody who had a lifetime of experience with it. I think one of the best things that I could advise, if you really want to get into it, you got to go down to the Senior Bowl. They have a scouting class down there. It is spectacular. Dan Shanka, one of the guys I work for, he runs our labs. He's really been heavily involved in that class, and I think that's a beautiful way to get into it.
Well, thank you, Coach. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Kyle, you got anything you want to ask him? I know Coach is out there in Colorado.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things, is like some of the keys that you look at, because as a offensive line, defensive line guy, when I'm watching film on a guy, a lot of times I'm looking at certain pass rush moves that might beat them, or things that, so that'd be something on my insight. And also Colorado wise, I mean, with Coach Prime being there, that's got to be a pretty exciting time to be there, and also to be a DB guy like you are,
Yeah. One of the things primary focus things that I'll really look at, is transitions, getting in and out of breaks, and, hip fluidity, you know what I mean?
Right.
You would be surprised how I asked somebody this question when I first got into it. How does a guy like a D2 guy or NAIA guy, make it, but one of these, Power 5 guys, they didn't make the roster, right? And The biggest thing was wasted movements, right? And those wasted movements, especially in the secondary wide receiver play, it comes down to hip fluidity, right? If your hips are not fluid, then you're stepping underneath yourself in and out of your breaks. And, that's whether 6 inches or, half a yard, that's a big difference in the game of football when it comes to being able to create separation or, close down separation, so,
absolutely.
I really say, especially if you're developing young guys, don't just focus on squats. You know, get them on some bands and get them doing those hip fluidity movements so that they can really get in and out their breaks. You know.
Absolutely.
And as far as like, Colorado, I'm excited to see what Coach Prime what he's gonna do. You know, from a coaching perspective, and this is my personal belief, right? Like at some point, you got to put the camera down and get to work, right? Like I don't see Nick Saban. I've never seen Jim Harbaugh. I've never seen Matt Brown. Some of these guys that are tried and true and have had successful program after successful program. I don't see them on Twitter broadcasting what their roster needs are. Right, they
Coach
get out.
Coop bringing the fire, baby. I love
it. They shake the bushes. They turn over every stone. They go find these guys. They're not waiting on guys to come to them and gravitate to them because of their charisma and their personality. And so I am excited to see what he does. But just from the stone cold coach in me, I want to see him get to work. And I'm really looking forward to that because I know that there's going to be some good secondary play. That's one thing. I know that secondary is going to come to play at University of Colorado, which takes it back to some yesteryears with University of Colorado, because University of Colorado has a lot of Jim Thorpe trophies sitting in their trophy room.
Very true.
And so it'd be good to see that. To see them get back to it. Now, I didn't play at University of Colorado. I'm not an alum there, but growing up in Colorado and having watched that program, I think it's good for college football. And University of Colorado matters.
Good stuff, Coach.
Good stuff. School. Before you get into
I don't know what just happened. Kind of glitched up, and then your voice disappeared.
Yeah, Coach.
I got the same thing.
Okay, so as a DB coach, what do you hang your hat on, and what do you hang your hat on your players being able to do? What does a Coach Cooper DB, what will we see? What do you look for?
I mean, first and foremost, like I hate to say it, but this is one of our adages, right? Everything's the same until it's different, and even then, it's still the same.
Say that again.
Everything's the same until it's different, and then when it's different, it's still the same, right? Like, so, and as we get going, that'll make a whole lot of sense. But what it really gets to is being able to, keep your eyes in the right place, eye discipline, right? Get in and out of your breaks. The everyday drills that we work on, we don't use cones, right? We play hard. We're gonna get to the ball. We're gonna force turnovers. Like our big belief is our primary job is to get off the field, right? Limit big plays, get off the field. And if we're doing those things, it comes down to communication. It comes down to eye discipline. Transition, protect and leverage. Those are things that you'll see. When you talk about secondary guys that I've coached in the past. Pause real quick so I can get this screen share together and then make sure that I'm got everything lined up.
Yeah, you got it, Coach. Just pause.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
so
Coach.
all right, so I'll start with our base, right, which is cover 4, our quarter stuff. We call it Florida. And as I get going, hopefully the families of coverages, the way that we encapsulate the name of the actual coverage will make sense. Because we went with states and cities and things like that, tried to keep it, where it was a relatable content for our players, where, when they hear it, they know exactly what that is versus, using the actual numbers for it. Now we teach off the numbers like cover 4, that's quarters coverage, but we call it Florida.
Coach, can I ask you something before you get going? Like quarter coverage, I've talked to a lot of different coaches. It means different things to different people and how they play it. So, like, is your quarter coverage like 4 across, like a picket fence, or is it an actual like read coverage where y'all are reading 2?
Yeah, it's a match coverage. We're reading 2. Everybody's got a different read on this one. So we play this coverage more against tight ends, or open tackles. Right, like if we get a slot receiver, and I'll move into that as I get going, where we call that Tahoe, which is a basic palms coverage, right? But it's our adjustment, it's our quarters adjustment versus expanded split by number 2. So this is more of our way to get 9 guys in the box. You know, we call it a hard quarters type of look versus that picket fence thing.
Okay, gotcha. So you're able to get 9 guys in the box against like 21 personnel. Like Wyatt was been in quarters coverage.
Yeah, 21 personnel. 21 personnel, 22 personnel, anything where you're giving us extra gaps on the line of scrimmage, we can get into this quarters thing. And again, this is again, when I say that it's multiple match coverages, right? We can be multiple in our fronts and our coverages when we are able to do this. So we can we call it outlaw. That was our over front, right? Then we have our under front, and then we have our our 3-4 stuff, which we call Okie. And then we can get into some of our 3-3-5 stuff or our nickel stuff, which is more like a 4-2-5. We could get into, being dime and still play the same coverage. We really wouldn't play Florida out of dime, but I love it out of under, because it gives you an opportunity where you don't really have to rotate those safeties, and you can still influence that run game by being heavy in the box, 9 guys in the box.
Absolutely.
We still there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I mean, the big thing here, is and I'll start outside in. We'll start with the stronger weak corners. Our base is to play off, right? We can utilize it. We can come up and we can press. We can bail, right? We can just play off, right? So big thing about it is you have to protect your inside leverage, right? We want to be lined inside because you're not really going to have safety help. You can lose your safeties. Now, there are times where you will get safety help, but we want to gamble on the fact that we're going to lose our safeties at some point. And so we do not want to give up posts. We do not want to give up slants because we're not going to have that help there every single time that we run this coverage. So as our day one rule, we align 6 to 7 yards, right? And we start on the outside shoulder because we like to disguise things a little bit, but then you got to work hard to get back to that inside leverage.
Yes, sir.
Right. And, your assignment, right, is the vertical of 1, right? You got the deep, right? Outside quarter of the field, right? But that's predicated on what that receiver's release is and how you protect your inside leverage, right? Your technique, we're reading the release of 1. Like in this one, the corner's eyes are on quarterback, is zone coverage, and number 1 receiver. We're not as much worried in this coverage about seeing 2, right? Safeties are going to eyeball 2, and I'll get to that in a second, right? And when we talk about, the vertical release, once he clears linebacker depth, I know a lot of guys say, 8 to 12 yards, 10 yards. I've played DB and, I've coached them for years. Like, it's hard when you're in the back pedal to tell me how many yards a guy is off the line of scrimmage, right? But if I can, like we talk about having big eyes, baby eyes. That's the way we used to talk. Big eyes, you want to have peripheral vision, great peripheral vision. So if I'm able to quarterback key and see my receiver, I should be able to see my outside linebacker, right? And so if number 1 is deeper than that outside linebacker, he's mine.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I like how you said that. Once he clears linebacker depth, who
Right.
did you get that from? Because usually people don't use that terminology.
That was one of those things where when I was working with the other Coach Cooper, at Benedictine, no relation, no nepotism. That was one of those things where we found unique ways to communicate it to guys, right? Because like when you're backpedaling, it's really difficult to tell me that this guy is at 9 yards or 12 yards or 3 yards, right? Like, you're more concerned about where he's at into your cushion, right? You should be able to always tell me how many yards away a receiver is from your toes, but how many yards away he is from the line of scrimmage, that gets a little murky sometimes. And so to cut down that indecision, we kept working until we found something that really worked for our DBs with their eye discipline. And he clears linebacker depth, he's yours.
Good stuff.
So, the only time you really see 2 is if 1 is driving hard inside, like an immediate inside release, where they're doing some type of switch route.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you're seeing number 2 because number 2 he may have a potential. Right, your eyes are taking you inside, so you can see number 2 through your peripheral, and number 2 may become your new number 1. And if he clears linebacker depth and he's the new number 1, he's still yours. Right now, a big note on this, and you can see right there at the bottom, right? we got to communicate all crossers, right? So we have a couple different ways, right? If any immediate linebacker depth crosser, we call China, 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 right? Anything over the top of linebackers breaking inside or crossing inside, that's an in. And what we found was that being able to differentiate between those two calls helped our inside coverage guys, our underneath guys, linebackers, safeties, and any coverage that we're running understand the depth that their new threat is coming to. Right, so if we're saying in, that's your key. Our next guy inside underneath coverage, that he's looking for something behind him, something over the top of him. If we say China, 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 that should alert him that he needs to stop sinking, stop getting depth because there's something crossing in front of him.
Crossing his face, gotcha.
Right. So you see right there, right? Any inside release by the number one receiver under 5 yards, we put that out there because that's good for linebackers to know, right? Because their drops are going to take them to certain depth. But for us, it's under linebacker depth. That's the way we look at that, right? We look at it like linebackers lined up at 4.5, 5 yards off the ball by alignment, pre-snap. So, that, again, that's for us. Under linebacker depth, it's China, 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 China. Over the top of that linebacker, in. Right? So now we talk moving into the safeties. Right, the safety that's got the number 2 receiver. So like if we're in a 12 personnel, this will apply to both safeties, right? But in this picture, right, we're in 21 personnel, with a left call, right? It's just I formation. So that's strong safety, right? We want your heels at 12 yards, right? On the outside shade of that tight end, just for leverage at the pre-snap mode, right? And you still got to protect your inside leverage, but you do have help. Right, you've got some underneath help from your mic, and you've got some cross the field help from your safety. So we don't have to sell, pre-snap my inside leverage. We don't have to put that out there for the whole world to know. Right, so we can line up on that outside leverage. But as that play moves, we want to be able to flat foot read. Right, and as we get into the film, you'll see got a couple different types of safeties. They're more aggressive versus more laid back. So when we say flat foot read, ideally we would like a guy to just be able to be on the balls of his feet standing still, right? Some guys are going to pop a little bit because they're a little more aggressive, right? Some guys are going to take a shuffle step forward, right? Because they feel like that tight end is not really a threat to them, right? But we're not giving up depth initially, right? So we always have a rule in our coverage stuff for DBs, and it's about the cushion, and every guy's going to be different. And that's one thing that I have learned coaching DBs is that each guy is going to be different, right? Like I've heard, like Coach Kyle, we were talking, asked me about Prime. I've heard him talk for years about the bicycle versus the T-step when it comes to transitioning, right? And I kind of agree with him on this one. Every guy is different, right? I'm not going to force a guy who's great at backpedal but struggles at the T-step to play in a mode that he struggles, right? So I might have some guys on the field who are great T-steppers and some guys who are great bicyclers, right? As long as you're getting in and out of your break, we're gonna have a shot, right? So I got to be able to coach them all, right? But then at the same time, as we're talking about this one right here, right, and that cushion part of it, you might have a guy, a legitimate 4-4 guy, right, and he can allow a receiver into his cushion a little bit more. Right, so we give a general philosophy that about 4 yards, that's where you want to start to transition and open your hips, right? Because you're getting that vertical threat. Now you might get some guys who are closer to 2.5, 3 yards. You might get some guys that really need to be at 5 yards, right? But that's one of those things through camp that we have to play with, right? And we watch it on film. I'll pause it, and I'll show you on film where there was one year where you'll see it. We had 2 corners, and they were different, right, in terms of their cushion. And you'll see some other clips where the corners seem like they're almost similar, where they're both at like 3.5 yards. But the big thing about it is, even with safeties, right, you don't give depth in this hard quarters look from a safety's perspective until you feel like you're getting that vertical threat and that tight end is pressing your toes. Now, ideally and hopefully, right, your safeties are more athletic and they run better than tight ends. So it almost seems like sometimes we're letting these guys get all the way into us before we're opening our hips. And we'll see that on film. But, you'll see the technique, right? We're flat foot read. And we have our keys, right? We're keying, like in the run game, we're keying the triangle. So from the end man on the line of scrimmage to that guard. So from that tight end to that guard, we're keying that, and we work this in practice. You know, we'll rotate it through. So we'll start with the first safety out as a safety. Second safety is the tight end. Third safety is the tackle. Fourth safety is the guard. And I'll give them, you know, you down block, you pull, right? And we're keying that. Our tight end, your vertical release, and tackle, your pass drop in, guard, your quick setting. And, you know, we'll rotate through it. Everybody gets a rep, and tackle, our tight end goes to safety, tackle goes to tight end, guard goes to tackle, and, you know, safety transitions back to guard, and we just rotate through this, and we get different keys, different looks, you know, just so that we can work our keys as far as it relates to those releases that we get in this quarter stuff, that, and it'll tell us whether we're getting run or pass, right? You know,
Hey,
these are run.
Coach, you might be a unicorn. I haven't seen many DB coaches that actually practice the run fits. That's impressive.
Coach, when you see the way that we play this quarter stuff, when I say 9 men in the box, I literally mean 9 men in the box. You'll see clips of safeties making plays for 1 yard loss, 2 yard loss. Because
I've coached with some guys and they want to put the 4 guys over 2. They don't care about the run game. They just want to stop the pass. So I appreciate you trying to stop the run game, Coach.
Yeah, no, and I mean, Coach, that's a huge part of it. But in order to get off the field, right, we got to stop what the offense is doing, right? Like we care about the run game, we care about the pass game, because that's what the offenses do. You know, like if we only focus on the pass game and we're giving up 8 yards a clip in the run game, we're not gonna get off the field, right? And Kyle, you can speak to that. You said you were O-line guy, right? Like if you can get 8 yards to run, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard defensively for us to get off the field on 3rd and 2.
That's right. Nothing's more demoralizing than just pounding a team and keep running it and stuff like that, man. You having that much pride in that's a special thing, because exactly what Coach Taylor said. A lot of people aren't taught exactly like that, you know, to take that pride in that run game and how to stop that. And yeah, man, if you can bleed a team to death by pounding the rock, man, that's what we're going to do all day. We're going to try at least, you know.
And I'll tell you this, Coach. I go back to, you know, when I was coaching high school football, I took a couple kids out to Kansas State for their visits and things like that. And Kansas State had this thing after a first down, right? The PA announcer would come out and say, "Another K-State first down." And I watched defenses get demoralized when when it truly is series after series, play after another K-State first down. You got to be able to get off the field as a defense. You know, and as a GA, I was a part of us. We did a study. Our staff did a study in terms of, you know, what translates to offensive success, what translates to defensive success. And, you know, that 3rd down percentage is huge when it comes to offensive success or defensive success, right? So when you're able to get off the field and give your offense another possession and take away a possession from the other team's offense, from your opponent's offense, that plays in big in the win-losses. You know, and we all want to win, right? Like we coach to win. And so, you know, getting those safeties and those corners involved in your run game is huge, man.
Amen. Dial it in.
So
good stuff, Coach.
So I'll go back to this. And as we start talking about some of this stuff, you know, your run pass key, right? We're tight end through the offensive tackle. I would say we see the outside half of that guard as well, right? If the tackle is going down, we need to be able to see that outside half. But that goes back to those, again, everything is the same until it's different. And then even then it's very similar, right? Like our key, we want to have big eyes, right? Whether it's a run key or a pass key, we want to have big eyes. We want to be able to have that peripheral vision. And if I'm seeing the tight end and tackle, there's no excuse for me not to be able to see the outside half of that guard when my pass key takes me to the quarterback. Right? So I got to be able to see my run and pass key pre-snap, because I don't know if it's run or pass as a DB. The offense does, because they got the play call. But I got to be able to see tackle to quarterback, so I need to be able to see that outside half of that guard. Right? You know, some of the blocking schemes, pin and pull and things like that, you know, that guard is going to come into play, and that's going to tell me where my fit is at as I'm coming up downhill as a safety. The other part to that is that, and you'll see it on film when we talk about this run pass key stuff, we go back to that underneath linebacker depth, over the top of linebacker depth. If that tight end is engaged, then I can come downhill. But if that tight end is free, so sometimes where if you got a 9 technique and your next guy inside is a 3 technique, that tight end might be coming down, but he's not engaged on his first 3 steps because he's going for the mic, right? So our safeties are going to be flat foot read. They're going to, because there could be a pass, right? Like it could be play action. So we're still flat foot read, but the moment that tight end engages, we're coming downhill. We're foot in the ground out of there, right? Like, and we're downhill and we're in that running game. And it's hard for offensive linemen to be able to block an athlete in space when we're coming like a bat out of hell. So then let me get to this weak safety alignment. Again, he's reading that in-man on the line of scrimmage. He's lined up on the outside shoulder, 10 to 12 yards off that offensive tackle. Because he does not have an immediate threat, you'll see those guys when we start to watch some of that film, when they're on that open tackle like that, they're encroaching on 10 yards because they don't really feel like they have a vertical threat from an offensive tackle, which allows them to play a little heavier and harder into the run game. All right. I'm going to slide over a little bit so that we can get to some of the actual coverage part of it, move into some of the basic, more in-depth part of it, right? This is our 4 deep, 3 under coverage, and you will see that we get to some zone pressure out of it here and there, where we get 4 deep, 3 under, or 2 deep. 4 deep, 2 under. I'm moving ahead and getting to some cover 2 stuff, but we get to our 4 deep and we get 2 under because we're zone pressure. And guys understand that because of their responsibilities in the basics, right? Basic coverage, how losing somebody into a pressure impacts or does not impact their job in coverage. All right. So I don't want to read everything out like this, but if you go back and think about you see the word matchup zone in basketball, think about some of that Syracuse Jim Boeheim type coverages, right? We're not there to cover grass in this coverage. We're covering the man that's in our zone, right? Like this is a matchup, right? So if this tight end clears to Sam's depth, strong safety, he's yours. He breaks in or out over the top of that linebacker, he's yours. Now, if he's in or out underneath that linebacker, call China, and get your eyes to your next phase. Okay, and I think this next slide we'll talk about some of the next phases. Now, you can see some of the disadvantages. It requires some athleticism, because at some point, once it clears that linebacker depth, it turns into man-to-man. He's yours, right? You're not passing him off unless he gets to a point where he's crossing into another vertical person's zone, and then we're communicating yours, mine, which is man technique stuff where you're banjoing things, right? But that's happening 15, 20 yards down the field. They better have time because our D line is going to get after it.
Let me ask you about your underneath coverage, because I think underneath coverage is probably it's first thing you got to look at for a well-coached team is that those linebackers reroute and don't let people cross their face. In your quarter coverage, you're sanding your build. Are they rerouting or are they just running straight to the flat? How do you coach that?
Okay, so this might blow some people's minds. We're not a spot drop team. We don't spot drop seldomly ever. So we're a pattern read, right? Which means we want to get our hands on, we want to reroute, right? We're late to the flats. Our underneath coverage in our Florida package, late to the flats, right? Like, hey, if you're throwing arrows or flat routes to your tight end and you're catching the ball at 3 yards, man, and that's the way you want to live against us, that's cool because we're going to get 2-3 guys to the ball. Guys are going to run to the ball. That is something that we preach, and that is something that we believe in. Guys are going to get to the ball. And, more often than not, we're getting more than 3 guys to the ball, right? But, it's pattern reroute, right? Like, in this coverage, right, if I'm the Sam, that tight end's he can't cross my face unless he crosses my face underneath me, right? Like, we're not going to chase anything under 5 yards. That's a big part of the philosophy of match coverage, right? We're not chasing anything under 5 yards. If you want to throw it under 5 yards and live like that, good for you. Your receivers are going to get sick of it because they're going to get hit by multiple guys every single play.
You made a great point. I heard Greg Williams speak at a clinic once, and he talked about cover three. And he said, if you're completing the ball on the flat and you're a defensive coach and the offense is completing the ball on the flat, you're playing cover three, you're clapping your hands. Because you can complete the ball on the flat, but we're going to run over there. We're going to see how tough your guy is. So
Right.
it's the same principle that you're talking about.
Right. You know, I mean, that's the thing, right? From a receiver's perspective, how many receivers really want to get hit? Right? They want to make plays. They want to catch the ball in space. But when you pursue, when you have great pursuit, team pursuit, and yeah, you completed. It was a 2-yard completion. You picked up 2 yards. You got a 4-yard completion, but your receiver got hit by. He got tagged by 4 guys. Right? Like, if you want to live like that, if that's your answer to what we're doing defensively, and you want to go down the field all game long, and you think your receivers are going to take, hits by multiple guys all game long, and you can beat us like that, hey, good for you, but we truly believe that at some point in time, that's going to become more of a benefit for us, right? Like, we're going to start getting the ball out, right? They're going to start putting the ball on the ground. Guys are going to start short arming, alligator arming those catches because they don't want to get hit.
You make a great point. I think some coaches and some players in high school and college football, I don't know about college, but high school definitely, that they don't understand this is not pro football. And in pro football, they have the 5-yard rule, because Bill Belichick stopped, the greatest show on earth. And they changed the rule in pro football. As long as that guy's in front of you, you can read the quarterback has the ball.
Oh no, you're 100% right, Coach. Like, even in college, it's the same thing. Like, once he gets to your hip, now you got to start playing with your feet. Not one thing I would say about rerouting. The best reroute is going to be with your feet first, right? If your feet are out of position and you're lunging for that reroute, the majority of the time you're going to miss on that, right? So when we tell our guys, again, this is where it gets into that pattern read versus spot drop, right? You got to be able to transition from your run key to your pass key in this underneath coverage, right? And read that receiver's release and get to his depth. We hope that, your path takes you to 8 yards. But if that receiver is running a 6-yard route, you got to make that adjustment, and you got to be able to get there. And the way that we always teach the reroute portion of it, and it comes into what we do in some of our cover 2 stuff, right? My guys, sometimes they think I'm a funny old man when I do this stuff, but I'll have a guy walk through the door, and I'll just roll a chair, like you take a rolling chair and roll it at the door, and you got to make an adjustment with your feet, and that's a win for us defensively. If a receiver has to make an adjustment with his feet, that means the quarterback has to hold the ball for that much more time, which buys the defensive line time, and it helps your safeties. It helps your corners, right? It helps the rest of your team just to make that guy adjust that little bit. Like, we don't have to, right, WWE a guy in a reroute, right? Like, if I get my feet in position, that's what we teach, to split the crotch, right? If I can get my near foot into his crotch and make this guy make an adjustment with his feet, and as he's adjusting with his feet, then I can use my upper body and get into him and get physical.
It's the same premise as a wide receiver, on a jailbreak or, stalk blocking, that you're not trying to take the guy's head off. You're basically basketball, you're blocking with your feet. So
right.
It's the premise on the defensive side of the ball, or even in offensive line when you pass pro, that you're actually blocking with your feet.
Right. And again, that's the fundamentals of it. It carries over into every other coverage that we have. And that's what, again, goes back to that philosophy. Everything's the same until it's different, and then it's still very similar, right? So when we jump into this cover 3 stuff, you're going to see some things you're going to be like, oh, teaching it based off of what you do with your base coverage at Florida. And that's for the underneath coverage, your reroutes. Even when we get into some of our cover 2 stuff, it's still some of the same philosophy, right? So yeah, you're 100% right. It's almost like the basketball thing, right? Where you want to get there with your feet. It's like, if my feet are behind and I'm using too much upper body, and a guy can really beat me, right? Like, he can dip his shoulders and he can get underneath me. If all I'm doing is just bringing my upper body, bringing my hands, bringing my shoulder pads, he can beat me. But if my foot is splitting his crotch, he's got to change directions. His receivers don't really just want to run through guys.
I mean, it's the same premises, Kyle, like when you're coaching offensive line pass pro, it's really not that much difference because in offensive line, you're protecting the quarterback, whereas in the secondary and underneath coverage, you're protecting, you know, the passing zones. So, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely. You know, as a defensive lineman, you know, you're trying to beat half a man. You're trying to work one half of his body. It's going to be a lot easier beating one side of him than going right through the middle of his chest and everything. You know.
You know, and that goes back again to, you know, protecting my leverage, right? If I'm taking my near foot and splitting his crotch, that means my other foot is protecting my leverage, right? So if he wants to come inside of me, now I got an opportunity to flatten him out and make him really have to work for that, make that quarterback hold the ball that much longer.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now I'm gonna switch over to this next slide where we start to talk about right, like, so this is where you get into some of the underneath coverage where we have the SAM, the wheel, their responsibility. You know, so what we were able to do coverage wise, and I want to pause for a second. We were able to put 2 calls in, so we would call like 43, right, which would be a 4 check or a 3 check, right? So if they came out in like a 2-by-1, right, this is easy. This is a 4 check for us. We're check Florida, right? Now if they came out and that fullback was lined up, you know, as a slot receiver, or that tailback was lined up as a slot receiver, we could have our cover 3 check if we really wanted to get into cover 3 versus that type of formation. Or if they came out in a 3-by-1, right, we could check, you know, to our sky strong, right? You know, if that tailback was slot receiver to the strength, and you know they're in a tray type formation, we could come out in the check, right? So this is more, you know, now we're starting to get into some of our check stuff, which I'll talk about a little bit. I don't know why.
Coach, can you talk a little bit about, like, so many people play quarter coverage against one back and 2-by-2 sets, but I like how you said that you like to check the cover 3. Can you tell, you know, championship football coaches watching, why is it you don't like quarter coverage against one back 2-by-2 sets?
Well, because you got to make an adjustment. Right, like your safety's got to your first, you know, one of your linebackers is gonna have to walk out the box, and then your safety's gonna have to play a little deeper. And now all of a sudden, whoever you have that had to walk out the box, so let's say it was that trade formation. Now all of a sudden your Sam is in conflict because he's still got a gap. He's still got a run gap, and he's still got to be able to reroute. And so now he's in conflict, and so that creates the opportunity for the offense to dictate some things to you, right? So we have a quarters adjustment, which we call palms, and I'll get to that. I'll get to that here in a second. But you know that it so just imagine like this. I'm trying to paint the picture without the film at this point. But if you have a play action or RPO and you're throwing out to that number 2 receiver, you're going to be extremely late to the flat. Like we know in quarters coverage, we're going to be late to the flat, but that's against a tight end. Now you're talking about being late to the flat against a much more athletic, a much faster guy, right? And leaving space, which kind of defeats our philosophy of if you want to throw the ball there, right? We're going to get everybody. We're going to get 3-4 guys there. We're going to be late there, which means that we have opportunities for arm tackles and missed tackles. So then we want to make some adjustments to cut down some of those opportunities for plays in space for the offense.
And let me ask you this as a scout, because I think the hardest position to play in football is the nickel, the guy that plays over top of number 2. Because he's got to cover and he's got to be able to come and run support. I mean, is that where the best players in football play now?
Coach, I wouldn't disagree with you. It's one of the most difficult things. I think there's a premium on that. You know, at the college level, I think there's a premium at the NFL level. Guys are looking for that guy, right? You know, now we're hearing slot corners, right? Which is really a nickel, right? But then you also have, you know, your nickel safeties, right? Like, so is it going to be a guy that's more run stopper? Is it going to be a guy that's more coverage? Sometimes you find a guy like the Buffalo Bills. They've been able to identify, evaluate, and find guys who can do everything from folding into the A gap to covering a little shifty wide receiver in space to setting the edge, right? And, you know, they're 80+% of the time they're in their nickel package, even versus 21 personnel, you know, but it's a premium because offenses are doing so many different things with different personnel groupings and trying to create those mismatches, space opportunities.
Yeah, I always say, like, you're either a guy that goes and gets the quarterback or you're a guy that covers people. I mean, the days of Dick Buckus middle linebackers is kind of over with. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, is that the way people see it nowadays?
You know, like I said, I think it, you know, some teams are looking for those slot corners. Some teams are looking for those,
Nickel
you
run
know,
stoppers.
more like that nickel safety, you know, where it's he's part Sam, he's part safety. And you'll see once I get into film, you'll see one year we had a guy. I love this kid, Drew. He was an awesome kid. When I got there, he was playing corner, but you know he has some fluidity issues. He could really run, but he has some fluidity issues. So we moved him back to safety. But because he had that skill set as a corner, it translated immediately to nickel. Now he's an all-conference player. Everybody in the conference put him at linebacker for all conference. He's a safety who had played corner. He was our nickel.
Wow.
Positionless football players. I mean, you hear it in basketball now. Positionless players. Kids are still worried about, oh, I'm a nickel, I'm a corner, I'm a safety, I'm a linebacker. It's positionless football.
Right. And then you see the following year, we had a guy who was, you know, he ended up being, actually we had two guys. They didn't beat out they were seniors. They didn't beat out the underclassmen at corner, but they were good football players. So they transitioned into our nickel and dime. You know, which is dime is essentially the same thing. So we had two corner types who could play in our sub package. And then we had to really work with them on, you know, being able to fold into gaps and things like that. And we had to adjust some coverages, you know, to try to keep them out of some of those situations where they were A-gap players on runaway, you know, because that is always a fear, you know, when you have a DB type playing in that position, right? Like where your Sam or your Will would play formationally, but there's runaway. Now all of a sudden your cutback player is a DB and he's really got to cross face a guard, right? That becomes a perilous situation sometimes for, you know, for those diminutive body types, you know. So there were some things that we did coverage wise. If we have enough time, I'll get into all of that, fellas. Like I love talking this part of the game. Hey, Coach, you want to give me a pause real quick? I'm gonna jump to some film.
Yes, sir. Okay, Coach.
All right, so here we got some of this, you know, quarters coverage. I got about 12 clips that I want to show where, you know, some of the things that we're doing in the pass game where we can really talk about run pass keys and some of the ways that these DBs are impacting the run game. And one thing I think I missed out on when I was talking on the diagrams was, you know, we're heavy crack replace. You know, we spend time working crack replace. So if you think you're going to come get our safeties because our safeties are driving hard and making plays behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage, all you did was bring our corner into play.
I mean, I think you have to crack replace because, you know, if a team is really great at crack replacing, I mean, I guess it's almost a trick play, but I mean, toss pass or play action where a guy's coming in and then, you know, to the corner. But basically, your safety's going to cover him, correct?
Right, and that's the thing. Crack replace is very similar to what we teach our safeties with that tight end. So remember, I talked about the 9 technique and the 3 technique, where if that tight end is coming down, if he's not engaged, it's not a crack. He's not blocking, right? So we're still, you know, on our man, right? We're still in our coverage. We're still protecting our inside leverage. Once he engages with that safety, now I'm triggering off. And that I have passed him over to the safety. That's one of those things where I talked about once, but now I've passed it to my next vertical threat help. So, you know, if you are trying to crack and go on us, but you didn't make contact, we just, because we work it, you know, it's again,
that's a good point. Good point you're making.
Yeah, and again, it's just one of those things. Everything's the same until it's similar, or everything's the same until it's different, and then it's still similar. Right? So, you know, these are things that correlate for safeties and for corners that, you know, we're able to work on, you know, at the same time. We're able to use the same drill that we use in some of this run key stuff with the tight ends in terms of the play action with the crack and place for the corners when it comes to crack and go or toss and go or bubble and go. You know, that's another one that people really love when you're playing quarters and your safeties are really driving hard, just bubble and go, right? But if you don't make contact on our safety, our corners are going to cover. But the moment that you engage and that corner sees that head cross the safety's bow, then the corner comes. And the safety, that is now passed off to the safety. And if he's trying to slide off you got to cover him. If he's really trying to engage with you got to beat him. So I'm going to go ahead and click play on this, Coach.
Yes, sir.
All right. So see here, like I said, like we're able to do this with multiple fronts. You can see here we're in let's see where we're at. I think we're in our honestly, I want to say we're in our 3-3-5. We might be in our 3-4 though, but I think we're in more of our, our 3-3-5 personnel package. And it might have been the down and distance. But
and
so you'll see
21 personnel with motion with the Z, right?
Right. So you got 21 personnel and the Z is going on that orbit motion. But I want you to watch the safeties, how they're popping their feet, right? This field safety or this boundary safety here, he's getting a little bit of depth where I really wouldn't like him to, but he's seeing, off of something that we saw on film when they went to this orbit motion, he's seeing that he's got an opportunity to get some post help in there, but he's going to hang a little bit because now all of a sudden, again, that receiver is starting to slow down a little bit. He hasn't seen him engage. Where if we go back and I'll do it. Make sure when I show the end zone, you'll see where the field safety, right? He sees that tight end engage. Now all of a sudden you see him start to drive. As soon as he sees this tight end engage in here, he's out of it, and he knows that it's run. And now our safeties are getting up there. Now I think our linebacker came up and made a play here. But now let's watch this safety right here, right? I'm gonna take it back just a bit so we can see the tight end's release. Because as of right now, it could be run or pass for this safety. Tackle is standing straight up. Guard isn't really pressing down the field. Now all of a sudden he's starting to see guard coming, right? So he's starting to settle, and then that tight end engages, and that safety's gone. He's out of his coverage there. He's out of coverage mode, and he knows that it's run. Right now, our outside linebackers. I'll go into this different one. This is where we're playing Central in Iowa, and this would be a great one to see right here. I'm gonna let it kind of play through this, but you'll see both safeties they're both making contact on that ball at about 1 yard, 2 yards. That's 9 men in the box, fellas. Okay. That's really what we're talking about, right? Now let's watch this run key. Now this is when both of them have tight ends, right? So they both have vertical threats. And now you'll see these guys because they had no respect for tight ends. This group right here, 4 and 5, they had no respect for tight ends. They felt like they were way more athletic, so they could play from 8 to 10 instead of at 12. And that's one of those things where, again, you coach guys individually. If I have a guy who athletically can get that done to play at 8 to 10, I have no problem with allowing him to do that, right? But let's talk the run pass key. I'll let it play, and then I'll take it back a bit, and I'm going to pause it, right? So right now it looks like tight end's trying to vertically release. This tight end right here looks like he's trying to vertically release to the field, trying to get an inside release. But the moment he engages, you see where 4 is going. He's coming to the ball. And now he's hanging on his leverage because he doesn't see linemen pressing downfield. Now they got gobbled up by our D line, right? Whereas when we look back at this on the boundary side with 5, right, we see tight end going inside. He's fitting outside. He's coming downhill. Now all of a sudden he sees where the ball's going. Now they're getting their eyes back to the ball. And both of these guys are involved in that play at the line of scrimmage if it's not a 1 or 2 yard game. This one would be great. I think you guys really like this one when I say we got safeties making plays in this quarter stuff. So this is another 12 personnel type thing. This was a 4 yard loss, tackled by a safety in quarters coverage. But watch his run key, right? He's keying this tight end right here. Keying this is his run key, this triangle right here to the inside shoulder of this guard. There's no vertical threat at this point. I can go. There's no vertical threat. That's an engaged tight end. He's not coming off. 2 steps into that, he's not coming off. Safety is gone. And he is a forced player, right? Like he's coming downhill. inside out force. You know, it's almost like we used to talk about that cover 3 stuff where you want a guy on that sickle angle, right? But it's more just downhill, inside out, track the ball. Now I'll talk. I want to say one of these things, and I don't know if I did a great job of this earlier. One of the things that we talk about in secondary play is leverage on the receiver, right, on your vertical threat. But we also talk about leverage on the ball carrier, right? And so I'm gonna go back one play just so I can get to that. On this play, at the snap, he is a inside shoulder leverage player. But as that ball continues outside of that tight end, now all of a sudden, you know, we really have to press to keep that thing on our inside shoulder, right? Because if it crosses our face as a safety, right, now we're out leveraged as a defense, and the only guy outside of that is the corner. Right, so we have to do a great job of being able to track the ball and maintain our leverage on the ball carrier as well. Now, here goes another one of those where you see safeties come up. Now there's an opportunity for a crack and replace to the field. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah, I see it. I mean, they got to account for your safety in the run game. That's the only way they can do it.
Now they're trying to come dig us out, right? Trying to come dig the safety out. See the corners hanging back, right? Now he's starting to press because he sees the receiver coming. But if that receiver slides off of that, the corner still got him.
Yeah.
But once he sees him engage, now you see that corner is coming towards the ball carrier. Now there'll be another clip in here where you'll actually see the one corner do it really well and another corner kind of struggle at it. But you see these guys, again, that run pass key. If we're looking at, this is I formation, so Core's got it easy. He doesn't have a vertical threat. That's an offensive tackle, right? He's 5 in the boundaries, got that vertical threat, so he's got to be a little slower, but not much slower, because he's going to key this triangle here from that outside peck of that guard to that tight end. Right, tight end this is that one I was talking about where you had a 9 technique and a 3 technique. Well, we really have a 5, but the tight end's able to come down, but until he engages, the safety has to hang back a little bit. But once he engages, see how that safety triggers? He's in on the pile. The other safety is crack and replace with the corner. Now here goes one where they were starting to get to a 3-by-1, so we were going to check, but then they motioned back to a 2-by-2. So hey, now we're good. We're back to Florida, and we're getting ready to play this. And those safeties are hard, right? Heavy involved in the run game. It's 9 men in the box. And then, you know, like I said, I really love it out of under. I like it out of 3-4 type stuff where, let me see, did we have an under on this one of these last plays? It makes it so much easier for a safety when my linebacker is on the line of scrimmage, right? Because my rule is he's vertical past this linebacker. He's vertical past this linebacker. He's mine, right? So if he's on the line of scrimmage, this is pretty much declared for me. Right, so this is I skipped it. And I didn't do a great job on that, fellas. I apologize about this. But when he steps in here and he's going to the mic, he knows right now as a safety, he's over the top of my linebacker. That's my guy. You know, so when we get into the pass stuff, you'll see it. All right, I can go ahead and skip back to this one. Now, again, this was an opportunity for a crack and replace by the field corner. I wouldn't say that he did a great job of it. He's a little late, but he gets back into play, right? Like, he's got to replace that safety on this crack and replace. Now, again, they're, you know, forcing us to check, but then they come back and they get into, you know, a queen set, which we're good in our hard quarter stuff. I would like to see this number 11. I would like to see our corner be in on this play. Now, 4 does a great job fighting across that face of the block, and he's trying to get doubled. You know, they're trying to send 2 for him because our safeties are very active in this coverage. I would like to see 11. 11 should have made this tackle.
When you're coaching your DBs, your safeties and corners on run support, do you talk about being a force player, contained player? Or do you say outside in, inside out, head on the outside, head on the inside? inside shoulder, outside shoulder? How do you communicate?
You know, we talk the leverage on the shoulder. You know, it's your shoulder leverage. Now when we talk tackling, you know, we want to get our head across. You know, head across, you know, roll tackle, depending on which way you're teaching it. If you're a head across the bow guy or any of those type of things, but leverage on the ball carrier. We talk force, immediate force, secondary force. You know, we talk, you know, fold, you know, late fold, you know, we talk home run threat, you know, those different things. So if I'm the backside corner and it's run away, I'm the home run threat. You know, if I'm the safety in this here, you know, I'm immediate force. Now we also talk the gap responsibility, you know, in Florida, you know, we want guys' eyes trained, you know, you're C gap to D gap. You know, if you're making the play in the B, that's because you're folding back in, right? Like we saw in a couple of those earlier ones where those safeties are kind of coming in, bicing that thing in, right? But in that situation, when that ball is run B gap to B gap and it's inside those B gaps, now all of a sudden you're, you know, you're still inside, you know, inside shoulder leverage on the ball carrier, but you're going to fold back in. You're not really a force guy on that. We do not need you trying to force plays in the B gap, right? You are an outside force player, C to D gap, you know, force player. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I don't know if you saw that right there where 11 is late on that. So that's the crack coming right here, right? 11 should be fitting right off his tail, right? Right off his butt in on this tackle. And instead he's kind of late, you know, eyes in the wrong place. You see his eyes as he's starting to come into the picture. You can see his eyes. He's looking for, you know, I don't really know what he's looking for, but, you know, he's looking for blocker. He's looking for contact instead of finding the ball. Once he sees that receiver make contact on that safety, he's got to come.
Yeah, because if that thing pops out, I mean, it could be a home run.
Right. Right. You know, especially if you're just kind of dogging it and your eyes are in the wrong place and you don't have any idea where the ball carrier is at. I think this is a great one. This is the one I said where you'll see a great crack and replaced by this corner here to the field when they try to come crack on this safety to the field. Right, he just replaces it, and this is one of those ones where it didn't initially start off as a crack. Right, the corner's coming up because he reads run. He sees the block coming by the receiver, so he comes up, and then the receiver gets lost and he turns back. But the moment he makes contact with the safety, we've been through this drill so many times, whether it happens early or whether it happens late, he knows that he's coming up. Corner comes up, makes the tackle. You know, I put that one on there just for, you know, just the teaching purposes of it, of how it's supposed to look. As soon as there's contact, corner knows he can come up. He's no longer responsible for that guy. I passed him off to the safety. Here goes another one of these, and this one I wanted to show, right? And I'm going to show it from the end zone. I want us to really watch this safety that was up here to the top, right? He keeps this thing on his inside shoulder, right? Slows down his feet. He maintains his ball leverage the entire play, right? So we're watching 14 here. This is the kid that I told you ended up playing our nickel, where he started off at corner, ended up being a safety, but he ended up being a great nickel. But see how he's tracking that thing? Right now, he knows he can go because that tight end is tied up. That tight end is in contact. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Now this tight end is starting to come up, but he sees the ball getting out wide. So he's tracking the ball. As the ball starts to cut back, he breaks down and maintains his leverage. I would like to see him continue to press the ball, but he's still got that thing on his inside shoulder. You know, far too often we see, you know, home runs on run plays because guys overrun. The secondary players overrun the play, right? So, you know, that's one of those things where, again, we train that ball leverage shoulder. We talk about that ball leverage shoulder. We show it on film. And if a guy is out of place on that ball leverage shoulder, we have to address it, because if we don't, at some point in time, that's going to come back and bite us. Right. So now I'll get into some more pass stuff. Started with the play. I want to start with the play action so you can see these run pass keys as it impacts, you know, the pass game. Right. So here we're in under. So this is our under linebacker right here, our Sam right here. And again, I really like this thing out of under. I really love Florida out of under because it cleans it up for the safety so much. If he clears that linebacker, I know he's mine, right? But this is be your typical boot type thing, right? And so our rules for our safeties is if they do not have a vertical threat by their 2, then they're starting to look to the depth of number 1, right? And if they don't have anything, then they can look back inside. And then if they don't have anything, they're robbers. They can go play ball, right? So if we watch this safety here, we'll see he doesn't have a vertical threat by 2. He's seeing pass, right? He sees run, but then all of a sudden he recognizes pass. You see his eyes start to open, his hips start to open so he can play to the depth of 1, right? He doesn't have anything to the depth of 1. That's an outbreaking route. Now he's free to go play ball. And he's going to be the one to come up and make this play on this flat route on the boot back. Now, if we watch the safety to the top, right, and I wanted to wait until I talked about him, he's keying, again, this triangle here. And he sees that release, so he's hanging. He sees contact. He's ready to go. That contact slides off. He's jumped that route. He's in front of that route. There is no chance for you to throw that drag back across the middle of the field. We'll see another example of it here. Again, it just goes back to that run pass key. We work these things, eyes in the right place. And so on this one, right, remember we said linebacker depth versus telling guys he's yours at 8 yards or he's yours once he gets to 10 yards, right? You see this safety to the boundary. He's keying that tight end, tackle, guard, and he sees a release, but he's engaged, right? So we did a great job with our under linebacker getting hands on that tight end. Now, he's a flat defender, right? He's not bringing pressure or anything like that. He's a flat defender, but he's rerouting the heck out of this tight end, right? So he has not cleared that linebacker, so he's not mine yet as a safety, right? Now, the moment that he lets him go and reacts to the quarterback and the quarterback as he boots out, you see this safety immediately jump him because he's over the top of the linebacker. Right now, I haven't done a great job in some of these things to talk about corners, but I will in a second. Here, I need to just start doing this instead of touching the screen because then that puts that pause in the middle. But as we're watching this safety here, right, he sees that release. He knows he's the first one on the field to know that it's pass, right? And this underneath linebacker depth. So now he's just looking for work. Right now, corner up top, right? He's inside leverage. He's protecting his inside leverage. There's nothing, no route that, and then he kind of slides off and lets the guy have inside, which, he ended up being our dime and our backup nickel because he was, he got beat out by a couple guys, by some of the younger guys. But, if you see this corner up top, right, he's inside leverage, heavy. And, I think I should pause for a second, not pause video, but talk about, our field split rules. We talk about hash split, field split rules. That will change our leverage by pre-snap alignment, right? If we get a guy that's lined up on the numbers, what are the chances that this guy is going to run it out, based on who this quarterback is when we start looking at things on film? Then we can change our leverage a little bit. And so what we saw with this one, this quarterback is not throwing outs to the field. This is on the right middle, right? Like 3 yards inside the right hash. This quarterback's not throwing outs. I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's on the upright. Yeah.
Right, it's on the upright, right? So this quarterback's not throwing outs. Like we didn't have any film of this guy throwing outs to the field like that. So we're not going to play pre-snap alignment to the outside. Let's go ahead and let them know that we're inside leverage, and we're just going to make sure that we're working our tails off to maintain its inside leverage. But you see, right, this receiver, he didn't get inside of this guy. We stayed inside leverage, pressed on his upfield shoulder, through that route. But I just wanted to make sure as I put this one on here so that we could really talk about, that safety, right? As he's seeing this, right? This is engaged. I could tell it's pass because I saw my tackle guard, right? I saw this release, but it could get murky because he's still engaged with the linebacker, but I know it's pass, but he hasn't cleared this linebacker, so he's not mine yet. But the moment that he clears this linebacker, you see 5 take it. Here's a better clip. One of the things that I'm going to make sure that I acknowledge as we talk about this quarter stuff, this coverage, is deep out routes, like verticals, right? Guys, if that's where they want to live versus Florida, They want, if that's your answer against this coverage, to throw go balls. Okay, because that's the one route that we're giving you. You know, you want to throw 15-yard outs to the field, 10-yard outs to the field. We're going to be late to the flat with our underneath coverage, and we're taking away inside leverage. If that's how you want to live, you better throw a great ball. Because if it's not a great ball, we're going to get back in on the play. But those are the routes that we're giving up. And, you know, one thing about, you know, when we talk about coverage, every coverage has something that you're giving up, right? And it's just got to be, you got to kind of marry it to who you're playing, right? This is another one of those teams where, you know, if they're throwing outs, it's a quarter sprint out, or, you know, a full, you know, comeback, you know, if they're throwing comeback routes, it's a boot, you know, they're not really drop back pass, throwing out breaking routes to the number one, right? Now, by his leverage, right, we should kind of tell that he's going to run some kind of out breaking route or something here because he's all the way down to the hash and the ball's on the opposite hash, right? But we're still inside leverage because, you know, if you're gonna throw go balls and you're gonna throw 10, 15-yard outs, it better be a great ball. Otherwise, we're gonna have opportunity to make a play.
I mean, when you see guys under the center, I mean, you really don't see in pro football guys taking 5-step drops and throwing the ball. It's outside zone run game and play action. So, I mean, as a DB coach, is that something y'all take into account?
It is. I mean, you know, we've seen so many guys that have gone to this spread thing. You know, so when you're under center, you know, we watch so much film with our guys, right? And our guys have gotten to a habit of watching film. They come to us with things where, hey, coach, did you see this play? But you know, one of the things that we do is we break down what you do formationally. We break down what you do when that quarterback is under center. We break down what you do when that quarterback is, you know, when that running back is lined up to the weak side of the formation. If you're in shotgun and he's, you know, 3-by-1 and you know, running backs to the weak side, we break down what you do when that running backs to the strength. You know, and when we get into some of that, you know, it starts to help us in protection, you know, how to attack a protection. You know, what protections are they in when the running back's weak in the gun, right? What protection are they in if that running back is at 7 yards versus 5 yards, right? You know, it's just little different things that we key on, you know, because it's all on film, right? Now, the biggest thing about it is more often than not in today's game, when you get a guy under center, you're going to get quick game or you're going to get some form of play action where they want to get their depth in the pocket, right? Or you get those sprint outs and things like that. You're not seeing as much, you know, 5-step, 7-step drop without some kind of, you know, fake to that running back, you know. But more often than not, it's they want to get that ball out quick, right? But they want to sell the threat of downhill run. So they want to try to get you compacted in the box so that they could try to throw a speed out or something like that, you know.
Mm-hmm. They want your safeties coming in and run support and, you know, hitting you over
Right.
the top.
Right. And again, I think one of the things that we found with this way that we taught with our those run pass keys with our safeties is a lot of the things that, you know, pop passes and things like that. We didn't really worry about those. They didn't really frighten us because again, our safeties are keying that guy. You know, and if our safety's eyes are in the right place, you throw a pop pass, you're gonna throw the ball to us.
Yeah.
Right. I think this might actually be one where you're going to see a safety lose his mind because he didn't catch it or he didn't make the play. Right. I think this might be one. I think I have one in there. I think this might be it. It might be going the other direction though. But this is one of those where, you know, there's a play action. They're trying to run, you know, a 4 vertical concept. You know, you see those safeties. And this is one of those things where I talked about earlier. If you watch the difference in safeties, right? One is more aggressive. He's popping his feet. He's excited. He's ready to go. Right. You see the other guy, he's a little more patient. He's stepping forward. Right. But then if you watch it, right, we talk about the cushion. Right. You see where my corner up to the top in the boundary, he's open, and that's about 5 yards. Right. Where you see my corner down here, he's at about 3 yards and he's still in his pedal. Where you see the safety to the boundary, he's stepping forward and he doesn't have a vertical threat. So now he's kind of robbing and he's looking wide receiver depth, number 1 depth, back to number 2. Where you see this safety here, he didn't open it until this kid was almost, 2 yards, 3 yards on his toes. right? And that's one of those things where you got to coach each kid individually. Like, it'd be great if collectively as a group, everybody is opening, everybody is the same speed, everybody is got the same, hip dexterity, right? But you got to kind of coach guys to who they are, right? Like I go back to that, the T-step versus the bicycle. If I have a guy who's great at one, I'm not going to force him to do something that he's going to struggle at. I'm going to coach him to be great at the one that he does with success. I've actually had a kid who, he was great as a T-stepper on his right foot, not so much on his left foot. He bike pedal. He was a peddler, like bike peddler on his left foot. Hey man, that's cool. Like, we're going to work on it continuously to work on those things, but I'm not going to force you to do something that you struggle at. Where you do something that where you could do something else where you have a strength in. But when we talk about leverage, right? This is one of those ones where this is a threat. If you see the route that they're running to the field, they force us inside. They're trying to really press our leverage. And again, if this is a route that you want to live off of, you better make a great throw every single time you do it. But he forces us inside, gets on our toes, and now we've got to flip over the top, to play this thing back. But we're still inside leverage. Like, again, that better be a great throw. If it hangs to the inside, we're going to take it away from him. Now watch that 5 here, right? Like, he doesn't get a release. That guy's locked in. So, he's looking for help. He's looking to be able to work, right? And you see 4 here. I love this kid. This kid, he was a special guy. He was an All-American. He liked to play with quarterbacks. He liked to let you think the leverage was there. And the thing that we always talked about is, I better see it by the end of the play, right? So as before this quarterback is sacked, you'll kind of see him slide into position, so he's got inside leverage, right? But he was one of those guys, a lot like the prime mindset. I can bait a quarterback. I'm athletically well enough I'm good enough athletically that I can get back into position. And here goes another one of those, coach, where you're going to see, they attack us. We force us to play our inside leverage with this safety here and then try to come back out on it. And we're giving up that route, but it better be a great throw, right? And our job is to get them down. And you start to see this right now. You're starting to see a couple guys getting to the ball, 2, 3 guys getting to the ball, right? Guys running to the ball. That's the way we're going to play. Like, there's some things that we're going to give up by coverage. Right now, you see 4 here, right? He has no threat. You see his eyes immediately go to 1, right? He's looking for 1, and then he's going to work back. If there's no 1, he's working back into 2. But we go back a little bit, we'll see where 1 was on an in-breaking route. So his job is to be at the depth of 1 or underneath 1, right? We're just robbing off. If we have no threat, we can just rob off in these coverages. Now, again, this is one of those things. Deep outs, vertical routes. You better make it count. Now, I'm a little frustrated with this corner because he paused, where we see the other guy, right? He drives on it, gets his hands on the guy, reroutes him, redirects him. He paused, hesitated, and got his eyes trapped on the quarterback. Didn't really see the receiver. But if you want to live with these low percentage throws, you better make them count. They didn't. So we're in good shape. Right?
That corner on that, I mean, they gave you 4 verticals, I think. I mean, everybody matched it. Should he had man turn on that, or was his turn okay?
No, I mean, he should have man turned. What we got really was we got a double move. It was 4 verticals, but they gave us a double move on it. They tried to get us to drive on it. Right, and he didn't drive. He just kind of got caught in no man's land, and that's one of those things where that's the worst position that you can ever be caught in, is flat-footed in your transition, right? Like, where if we watch the guy up top, because they're running the same route up top, right? Like it's like an out and up, or hitch and go, or they just kind of. But if you watch the guy up top, he actually drives on this thing, right? And because come on, who? Because he's driving on it, right? He's able to get his hands on, reroute, and he does not lose, right? He does not give up separation, where if we watch 26 down here into the boundary, right? He's kind of in no man's land, and then gets ran by, right? But he works his tail off to try to get back into play. But, that's one of those things. If that's the route that you want to live on, you better make it count. Because for us, this was a run situation. So we're in, again, 9 men in the box, right? Safeties, and this is one of those things where we talk about safeties. One safety is, at like 1 yard, 2 yards with his leverage, or with his cushion. Another safety is probably at about, 3-4 yards. But that's who each guy is. As long as they are able to stay over the top and don't give up separation. And like I said, this was one I put it on here because, yeah, this is a threat, for guys to throw these balls on you. But, that's a low percentage throw. And, while they did throw a good ball, they didn't make it count. And this was one where we had bad technique. Our guy did not drive on that line. I would really prefer for him to drive on that and man turn it, because it is over linebacker depth. So that's your guy. You can man turn that. He got caught no man's land, halfway zone turn. Am I driving on it? Am I sinking? Like, what am I doing? And for that, he got ran by. Once it cleared linebacker depth, I'm sorry, Coach, it's static. I didn't know if you were trying to talk. Coach, I'm getting a lot of static. I couldn't really make out what you were saying. I'm still having problems hearing you. I'm gonna try to find the Zoom again and come back to it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm not really getting you clearly, Coach Taylor.
Yeah, it's a lot of static on your end, Coach. Here, maybe what I'll do to see if I can help is if I drop the mic for a second. Oh, geez, what did I just do?
You there?
Y'all got me?
There you go. Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, I hooked up this other mic. So I was going to ask you about in phase and out of phase with your DB. Like your DB was out of phase. He did a great job of just running. And I was wanted to ask you about how you coach that. And then, like, as a DB, when the receiver's eyes and hands go up, you play through his hands. How do you coach all that stuff? I know I gave you a lot to say right there, but
yeah, I didn't really get into the technique. I was talking more scheme. But for us, I always say in phase, out of phase. That's where you display your heart. There's gonna be times where you're out of phase, where you're out of position, but you got to work your tail off. There's gonna be times where you can get beat on your leverage, but you got to work your tail off, right? And so when we do our grading, I might ding you because you're out of phase, but if I see you work your tail off and you get back to phase, and we always talk about phase like in terms of, imagine if a guy's got a back pocket, right? If you're able to reach out and touch his back pocket, I'm gonna consider you to be in phase, because at some point in time that ball still gotta come through you if you play that high point, right? So we work a lot of different positioning, right? Like we'll start guys off. I like to work off the sideline going, into the middle of the field. And so we'll start a guy off. You know how you got the dash marks there, the yard markers, for like for the 36-yard line, it's 37-yard line. Sometimes I like to start a receiver off on the DB's toes, right there where the DB's toes are half an inch away from the sideline, and the receiver is lined up directly on the sideline. And the receiver, you're going full speed. Could you guys hold on? Just give me a second. I'm sorry, guys. Just give me. Okay.
okay, Coach, we're back.
Okay, so when you're talking, when you're in phase, it's a little different. When you're out of phase, you got to work your tail off to get there. But when you're in phase, we want to be able to squeeze a guy. Before we even start talking, playing the ball, playing the eyes, playing the hands, we want to squeeze a guy. We want to take them as far away from their fade line as possible. Make it as hard as possible for that quarterback to be able to complete that pass. Leave him, instead of a swimming pool, we want to leave him a temple, right? When guys talk about go balls or fade balls, they want the receiver to hold the fade line, right? Restack the DB and leave the quarterback this big old giant swimming pool. We want to squeeze you. We want to leave you a thimble. We want to make that as hard as a throw to complete as possible, right? And I think this next clip is perfect timing for this one. But the other thing that we talk about, and you asked the question, so I want to make sure I touch on this. We play the eyes, the hands, the ball, right? Like, again, our job is to get off the field. So we want the ball, right? Don't ever get it twisted just because you play DB, that the expectation is that you can't catch, that you can't make plays. You can catch. I've coached both positions. We do the same ball drills that we do with receivers. We do them with our DBs. We're gonna make plays on the ball. We're gonna make some spectacular catches. We're gonna make some spectacular plays. But when you're in phase, when you're out of phase, you got to work to get in phase. And if you cannot get back in phase because that guy is that good, you got to work to be in position to make the tackle. Right? That goes to that eliminate big plays. Right? Sometimes they might get a 20-yard catch on you, but if you drop them at 21 yards, let that thing turn into a 45-yard game. Now we have an opportunity to get off the field again instead of, they have an opportunity to strike a band and start celebrating and start cheering. Right? So when you're in phase, we play DBs, or we play receivers' eyes, we play receivers' hips, right? They sink their hips, we're sinking our hips. If their eyes go back, our eyes go back. And we do these drills, like line up and go from sideline to sideline. And, it's on each guy, right? One guy's offense, one guy's defense. You give them what you want to, right? Eyes, hips, hands, and we work all of those things. He throws his hands, you throw your hands, right? And we like to replace hands, right? So if guys, receivers are taught that bread basket, we want to get our hand directly in between those, right? As we're going in to break that pass up. Right now, when we start talking about playing the ball, now we're talking about playing the high point, and that's putting ourselves in between the receiver and the quarterback, at the highest point of that ball, which gives us an opportunity to make the play instead of the receiver. But, we really work these drills, in terms of, playing the eyes, playing the hands, sinking the hips, we mirror, we call it shadow and mirror. That's the actual name of the drill, right? We shadow and mirror what the receiver does. He throws his eyes back, we throw our eyes back. Now, the thing about that, though, is, right, we got to be in a great position, right, squeezing the guy. And when I say squeeze, we want our, right, like if we are able to push our hand through his hip, there's no way that you can run in a straight line with somebody pushing their hand on your hip. Right, and we do it low. We don't want to push on the shoulder because we're going to draw flags, right? But if we're pushing at the hip or the thigh board, it makes it harder on those guys to run in a straight line. And so we can still feel them if they're throwing their eyes and we're throwing our eyes. Because the savvy receiver will throw his eyes and still be running vertical on you, right? But if you feel him, he's still going. So, you get your eyes back, right? Again, when they throw their hands, we throw our hands, right? And we try to throw our hands to break up their bread basket. And at the same time, one of the greatest tools that you have when you throw your hands is that offhand you're rapid, right? Because if you don't get the breakup, at least you get the tackle, right? Eliminate big plays, get off the field, right? Yeah. If you miss the breakup and that guy keeps going down the field and he picks up, another 30 yards, you're not getting off the field at that point. They're striking up the band.
Oh yeah.
Right. So again, if they catch the ball for 25 yards, they're throwing 40-yard goals, and that's how they want to live. Sometimes they're going to get those plays. But if you drop them where they caught it, you have an opportunity to get another play and to get off the field.
Yes, sir.
And that for us is advantageous to the philosophy of what we do on defense, right? To keep you out of the end zone, right? To make you have as many plays as you have to take, right? Because at some point in time, we truly believe we're going to do some things with other coverages and pressures and things like that, where you're going to give us the ball back. We're going to put ourselves in a position to get off the field. But let me run this clip right here, Coach. I think you'll see a great squeeze, right? This is another one of those opportunities because we're playing inside leverage where, if you want to throw that go ball, right, you're going to have great technique by the receiver. You're going to have a great ball. You're going to have a great ball by the quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. And if you complete it, hey, good for you. We're going to live another play, right? So again, this is our hard quarters coverage. You see these safeties hugged in tight. This is 9 men in the box. And this is where they throw it, But if you see this, right, where the receiver is trying to go and where he gets squeezed to, right? And when I show it to you from the end zone, you're going to say, That's a tough ball to complete from a quarterback receiver perspective, right? We forced him to throw it into a timble, and he left that ball a little too far to the inside. That's an incomplete pass, right? We're squeezing, squeezing, squeezing. You see where his hand is at on that hip. He's engaged, and we're just running with him, right? Now, as he starts to play the eyes, starts to play the hands, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. You see he plays the eyes late, right? And that's one of the things. Oh, geez, where'd he go?
I want to ask you about the boundary safety on that.
Yeah,
no threat.
Let me get back to it. I'm gonna have to skip ahead.
That's all right.
Oh, there it goes. There it goes. There it goes. Go ahead, coach.
Yeah, the boundary safety on that. He didn't have, like a number 2 threat. So when he read drop back, his eye should have went to number 1, right, and played over the top.
No, we want to play to the level, right? At that point in time, we're robbing underneath, right? We don't want to play over the top with those safeties, because then you're turning and bailing, and we want these guys always considering, right? Like his eyes transition a little late, staring at the quarterback, right? Neither one of these safeties had a number 2 threat, right? So both of them their eyes should be looking out to number 1, where we see this is late in the game. This is a freshman. I'm sorry, hold on. Let me get my stylus. Let me get the arrow for you. This is a freshman here, and this was like our 3, but he's starting to work with, but neither one of their eyes are truly disciplined. His eyes go late, right? So if we're getting digs by number 1, we should be playing that underneath. If we're getting curls by number 1, they should be playing that underneath.
Okay,
right?
Good.
We don't want, like, that's why I say you lose your post up. You can't expect to have post up. If you do get post up, it's going to be late and underneath.
Yes, sir.
But that was a great example of the squeeze, how we want to play that vertical. And that was the same kid that got kind of caught in no man's land earlier. But he's squeezing that, and that's a tough throw to complete. He left that ball on the numbers. I don't know why that thing keeps disappearing like that. But as you can see here, the freshman to the field, he doesn't get that number. He doesn't get that number 2 threat here. So he starts working with width. I would like to see him get his eyes to number 1, just a quick peek out there, right? I think what he did to the boundary was he peeked inside. He's supposed to go 1 first, because that's your nearest threat, right? You get to the depth of 1, and then if it's an outbreak or 1 is still running vertical, there's no in break, then you can peek back to 2 and start to rob back across the field. That's the way we gain guys back. Like if you're getting those deep crossers, you gain these guys back in there, and the quarterback never saw them. But you see, he kind of got his eyes out to 1 late, but I think that was because that's when that ball was thrown. You know what I mean? The ball was in the air, so he's got his eyes out there.
Yes, sir.
But he's definitely late on that. Definitely late on that. And actually, that was 5. That's a little surprising for me. That was 5 right there. Yeah, that was 5. He should have been a lot better than that. I saw examples earlier where he was doing exactly what he was supposed to do. This one, he's trapped in on that quarterback. So yeah, Coach, I really appreciate being here. I'd love to do this again.
We're gonna do it again. So everybody on Totem Pole Nation and the Championship Football Coaches Clinic, be ready to watch Coach's Palms coverage. A talk he's going to give. He's going to come back. He's going to talk about cover 3 and how all these match up for tonight. Though he talked about his Florida coverage, his quarter coverage, his cover 4, and we really appreciate Coach Cooper coming on. Coach, anything else you'd like to say to the Championship Football Coaches Clinic, or anybody that would like to get in contact with you if they have any other questions?
You can always reach out to me at Coach Cooper 6 on Twitter. And I'm always game to answer questions. Big thing again, like I said, would be, always work your guys' hips. Work those transitions. And from my opinion, you don't break on the ball with cones on the field, right? Get rid of those cones, right? And teach these guys to break on quarterback movements. And when I come back on this Palms coverage, a lot more of that will be about, breaking. We call it hair triggered on the quarterback's movement. Right, we break on that quarterback. When that quarterback's front hand drops off the ball. So I would encourage you. I hope that you guys. I hope I did a good enough job for you guys who want to come back and watch. But I would encourage you to teach off of the things that guys are going to see on the field, right? And to really work those movements, and mirror your scheme, right, to your guys' talent and coach guys individually. Don't try to force guys to do everything the same way. Like, you may have a guy out there who is a better athlete than another guy, and he can react to a guy being on his toes a lot better than your other guy, and that's fine. Like, every individual is going to be a little different. Coach the individual. Don't be so caught in, you got a T-step. I coach the T-step. You may have a guy that's lightning quick. He's shot out of a gun, shot out of a cannon in his transition. If he's pedaling, bike pedaling out of it, let him do it. Then you may have a guy who's a T-stepper. You may have a guy who T-steps well with one foot and pedals well with the other foot. Let them do it. Just coach it up. Give them a lot of reps at it and just help them get better at what they have their strengths in. Other than that, I think it's great for anybody to be able to, talk ball at any given time and to be able to pick up knowledge. And we'll get into more technique stuff next time. This one was a little bit more schematic just because of the eye discipline, and the involvement in the run game, the run keys and things like that. So, Coach, I would love to come back, and I thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. We're going to have you. Thank you, Coach. I appreciate you.